Hello dear friends. It's easy to describe a movement, but very difficult to define stagnation. Opinion piece. Tense calm. Not moving much. In the eye of the hurricane. There is stalemate. Calm before the storm. Spain to double its tourism. Political change in Colombia. Gold drives up the price of the rouble. 30% of wealth lost in the world. Macron loses his absolute majority. Everything is imploding right now. Stocks won't sink forever. There are bank runs and falling stocks. Wells Fargo says a recession is looming. Financial restart would follow full-blown crash. Europe tends to coal for lack of Russian gas. US sells oils from its strategic oil reserve. Ireland accuses London of economic vandalism in quotes. From transistor to memristor, the microchip of the future. China could spy through smart coffee machines. Money lots pose massive threats. Protests sent Ecuador's debt plummeting. United Nations negotiates Ukraine food blockade. UK approves extradition of Julian Assange. 70,000 Belgian workers protest over cost of living. Britain braces for its biggest rail strike in 30 years. Basel III is a way to legally close banks for non-compliance. Let's start. We are seeing a kind of stalemate according to puffiness, like the calm before the storm. It's not moving much, at least not in the direction we would like to see. There's a kind of World War III mischief at work here, and it's not fun. NATO estimates that the war in Ukraine will last 4 years, but I am not that pessimistic. There are many with their noses pressed to the glass behind where they live, pondering how to maneuver and negotiate their way out of this kitchen that is happening right now. Some have made it worse and some have tried to escape. Some are in the thick of it, and many others don't know who the big bosses are. So just watch the film that is playing and rest assured that no one in the white hat camp will give up the ground they have gained. It's just that both sides have to find a way to meet their needs, and it's not happening very fast. Hang in there, better news will come. Everything is imploding right now. Who really believes that the world can go a year or two without a complete implosion? We have already lost about 30% of the world's wealth in the last few weeks. Bank runs and collapsing stocks. It all seems very biblical. It all seems... repetition. How long do people have to keep quiet before we know what is really going on? A break-even point is state of affairs or negotiation that, for whatever reason, cannot be carried forward for the time being. In economics, the break-even point, or where sales produce neither profit nor loss. On a mechanical level, in steam engines or internal combustion engines, it is a position where the piston changes the direction of its movement. It is also the position of the gears in a car gearbox, where the movement of the camshaft is not transmitted to the mechanism acting on the wheels. Perfect storm. The perfect storm in oil caught the markets off guard. European stock markets muted by the French elections, with inflation jitters. Britain prepares for its biggest rail strike in 30 years. Impressive sea of suitcases at London airport as flights are cancelled. Heathrow cancels flight affecting 15,000 passengers as it battles baggage backlogs. Many airliners have already cancelled thousands of flights for the summer season, including Southwest Airlines, which has cut nearly 20,000 summer flights. Delta will cancel 100 daily departures from US and Latin American destinations, affecting travel from 1st of July to 7th August. The Italian government is considering imposing a state of emergency due to limited gas supplies from Russia. Bank run in China with long queues in Henan, Shanghai and Dandong. China could spy on us through smart coffee machines, according to a researcher. From transistor to memristor, the microchip of the future. Week of pain forecast for Australia as market heads into rocky territory. Benjamin Fulford claims that the military is destroying biological weapons labs around the world and that sabotage at oil refineries and gas plants is intended to collapse the European Union. Money lots pose massive threats to markets. The problems of central banks in the US, Europe and Japan mean that investors must prepare for the kind of risks that lead to extreme price swings. Transformation. A global stock market crash would be followed by a global financial restart. Protocol 19 deals with the ISO 20002 standard. Protocol 20 is the complete transfer to quantum technology and is underway right now. Thereafter, all confidentiality agreements will expire. Basel III is a way to legally close banks for non-compliance. Russian banks are no longer subject to Basel III. On 24th March, BlackRock admitted that the war is killing globalization. On 25 March, Russia abandoned the SWIFT system and adopted a gold-backed currency. On 11 April, Russia defaulted on its foreign debt. On 14th April, Russia called on the BRICS group to expand the use of national currencies and integrate payment systems. On 29th April, Russia switched to the gold standard. With China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia and many other countries now listed on the new global gold-backed financial system, more than 3 billion people have left the central banking system and market collapse is expected, probably triggered by the launch of China's real estate and the fall of Evergrande, which was delisted last Thursday. Economy. Recession fears roil markets amid inflation. The dollar falls and the euro rises as attention turns to the ECB. The rouble soars to a 7-year high on gold support. Oil rises as supply shortages overshadow demand destruction. House prices likely to fall as rates rise. Hot housing market keeps foreclosures at bay. More than half of consumers didn't save during the crisis. Who can save? Metals. The price of gold remains near $1,850 a troy ounce. Gold rallies as the dollar falls, awaiting more signals from the Fed. Copper stands its losses below $9,000. Copper falls to a 9-month low on recession fears. Iron one plunged more than 7% in Singapore, giving up all of its gains this year as steel mills halted blast furnaces amid growing pessimism over China's demand outlook. Cryptocurrency. Bitcoin hovers around $20,000 and investors fear a domino effect. Bitcoin holds above $25,000 after a week of forced cryptocurrency selling. Bitcoin's struggle to hold $20,000 keeps the crypto market on edge. Elon Musk backs Dogecoin amid lawsuit. Michael Saylor, the Bitcoin whale, urges governments to step in and regulate the parade of horrible things in cryptocurrencies. Iran will cut off electricity to licensed cryptocurrency holders. Chinese court rules that car sales made with digital currency are invalid. Central bank digital currencies share very little with cryptocurrencies. USA. The US anti-inflation plan is to lower taxes and tariffs on China. Gasoline prices fall below $5 a gallon from their June 14th peak. The US sells oil from its strategic reserve, which could run out sooner than expected. The Fed sees a soft landing for the economy after its rate hike. Cathy Wood warns that the Fed is ignoring dangerous signals as it presses ahead with its draconian rate hike. The US is in talks with allies to cap Russian oil prices. Countries will implement a corporate tax to avoid revenue losses, Yellen says. Wells Fargo sees a recession looming next year. Labor shortages hamper construction work as infrastructure spending kicks in. Trudeau is tackling Canada's inflation fight, Scotiabank says. Europe could return to coal if Russia reduces its gas flow. Austria returns to coal against Russian power play. Germany turns to coal to compensate for the lack of Russian gas. Germany announces more measures to save gas, including the use of coal. European gas rises further as Russian cuts bring risk of rationing. Germany's finance minister compares gas relations with Russia to a tug of war. The Kremlin makes gas supplies to the European Union conditional on the return of pumps to Gazprom. The flow of Russian oil to Europe has quietly started to increase. Tesla employees in Germany are leaving the company. Banks and energy stocks are driving a rally in European shares. BlackRock strategist sees a big opportunity in European banks. Ukrainian refugees would boost labor force by 1.3 million employees. Intel is seeking $624 million in interest payments from the European Union after winning an antitrust case. The ECB says its tool to lower the risk premium will be effective. Eurozone at risk of inflation psychology, says ECB's Lane. Construction output falls 1.2% in the European Union in April. Italy and its banks feel the hit from a spooked bond market. Macron loses absolute majority as the left and right advance. France's new fragmented parliament ties Macron's hands after losing its majority. McDonald's will pay $1 million fine to avoid criminal prosecution in France. Denmark will keep F-16 fighter jets in the air because of the Russian threat. Hungary offers a possible route for Ukrainian grains exports. Greece increases its income from tourism. Greece defends itself against Erdogan's accusations of mistreatment of refugees. Belgium agrees to spend 2% of GDP on defense by 2035. All flights from Brussels cancelled due to strike. Ryanair strike spreads to Belgium, Portugal, France and Italy. More than 7,000 Belgian workers march through the streets of Brussels against the rising cost of living. The European Union cuts its grain harvest forecast due to dry weather. 5,800 people died in the European Union from illicit drugs in use in 2020. Increased consumption, more local production, and penetration of Mexican narcos. Belgium returns to the family of Congolese anti-colonialist leader Patrice Lumumba, the only remaining part of his body a tooth. The body was dissolved in acid by the police. United Kingdom. The British government approves the extradition of Julian Assange to the USA, where he faces up to 175 years in prison. UK to tighten regulation of deferred payment loans. Ireland accuses London of economic vandalism in quotes for its unilateral plans. Rolls-Royce offers its workers £2,000 to help ease the cost of living. Spain. Triumph of the PP in Andalusia and the return of bipartisanship. Historic victory of the right wing in the Andalusian elections. Spain will double its tourism. CaixaBank estimates that the tourist GDP will grow by 50% this year. Foreigners are already buying more homes in Spain than before the crisis. The purchase of homes in Spain by foreigners has increased by 28%. Fire ravages several areas in Spain. Navarre is in a critical situation. The Spanish stock market rises 1.72% and approaches 8,300 points, helped by the banks. Telefónica regains €4.5 after losing 5.5% in the last 2 weeks. Banco Santander supports the 75,000 farmers and stockbreeders of the DCOP cooperative. Banco de Sabadell clears the way to annual highs and Bankinter follows in its footsteps. Unicaja and Sabadell, the domestic banks with the most potential. The Spanish fashion chain Mango will sell its shops in Russia. Turkey's shadow is getting longer and longer according to BBVA. Algeria orders its travel agencies to suspend their activities with Spain. The Algerian authorities speak of a misunderstanding and cancel the order to suspend tourism with Spain. $1 million losses. Companies suffer the worst of the Spain-Algeria crisis. Toledo fire under control, but still needs to be extinguished. The European Commission regrets the death of the migrant found in the Bidasoa River. The British arbitration for the British ship doesn't block the Spanish sentence according to the European justice. Spain finalizes the sending of police to Ukraine to investigate war crimes in both sides. Americas. Colombia faces historic change with Petro as president. Colombia welcomes the election of Gustavo Petro with great expectations. Political change in Colombia hope for the nobodies and impact on Latin America. Colombia is expectant about what Gustavo Petro's government will be like, according to political analyst Iván Garzón Vallejo. Gustavo Petro's victory is a turning point in Colombia's historical moment, according to researcher Javier Calderón Castillo. The 11 challenges that Petro will face: poverty, social unrest, expansion of armed groups, compliance with the peace agreement, assassination of social leaders and ex-combatants, massacres and displacements, excessive use of public force, scandals in the armed forces, cocaine crops and production, drug trafficking, and relations with Venezuela. The ELN announces its willingness to resume peace agreements with Petro's government. Colombia's ambassador to the US resigns after Petro's presidential victory. Another court orders Duque's arrest or fine for contempt of court ruling. Panama's president congratulates Gustavo Petro on his election in Colombia. Panama's rubbish crisis drags down the failure of its model, say businessmen. DeSantis is disappointed by Colombia's election result. Vargas Llosa says Colombians voted wrong and considers Petro's victory a mendable accident. Canadian energy stocks fall on Petro's presidency. Colombian business fears investors in Colombia are looking to gauge how radical a government led by Gustavo Petro will be when he takes office in August. There could be a sell-off in the peso and the country's bonds when markets reopen on Tuesday after the holiday. The indigenous mobilization had an impact on the Colombian vote in Ecuador. The indigenous movement in Ecuador ratifies the continuity of the protests, which are now in the 8th day. Outrage at the police seizure of the Ecuadorian House of Culture in the midst of the national strike. Fear of protests causes Ecuador's debt to plunge. Peace in Ukraine and arms control, Ecuador's goals at the United Nations Security Council. Boric calls the closure of a copper smelter in Chile the right decision in quotes. Castillo announces a meeting with Boric to discuss border issues between Peru and Chile. The European Union points out shortcomings in Bolivia's justice system following the conviction of Áñez. Mexico City wins Guinness World Record for the largest boxing class. March in the southeast of Mexico in response to the increase in violence and the lack of justice. The sale of doctors abroad, Cuba's most profitable business. Agreement with Mexico. Argentina announces that it will reaffirm its rights over the Malvinas Islands, Falkland Islands in English, before the United Nations. The Honduran justice system sentences the mastermind of the murder of activist Berta Cáceres to 22 years and 6 months in prison. Brazil's real fell on Monday, leading declines in Latin America. Petrobras CEO resigns over fuel prices and Bolsonaro's criticism. Misral in the Brazilian Javari Valley, where Don Phillips and Bruno Pereira disappeared. Fishing, hunting, mining, drug trafficking, and the absence of the state in the valley. President Bukele of El Salvador says patience is the key to Bitcoin. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.